Before sinking a 20-ton truck, you struck gold. Tony BEETS is dealing with a very expensive gold rush catastrophe. Rushing to clean up the mess, Tony has a serious issue. His 30-acre settling pond is entirely filled with silt. Tony has no alternative but to order the wash plant to stop down because the purpose of the sibling ponds is to remove the muddy water. Environmental authorities would shut him down if the dirty water spills into the neighboring stream, and that is a risk he just cannot afford. The deeper they go in the mining process, the better they perform, but at the moment, the top pond at Paradise Hills is full and silt is blocking the culvert, causing the water. Murky Mike and his team must elevate the D's and deepen the pond to give the silt more space to settle. They bring in a specialized side dumper truck to dump loads of dirt as Mike levels because if they don't repair this quickly, the entire operation may come to a complete stop. Dealy dozer on the way. Although it's a difficult task, closing for a few days is preferable to losing everything. I just tipped the side dump on the dike for the first time ever. A truck has flipped at Paradise Hill with a full load, a voice crackled over the radio as calamity struck. Load of dirt. The truck's rear tire seized the dike's edge and gradually pulled it down until it fell over. This was the first time I've ever seen. The truck is presently flipping here. Mike doesn't waste any time in bringing in his 220 excavator to try to pull the truck back onto the road when a 10-ton side dumper is hanging off a 15 drop that is dangerously close to sliding into the pond. However, the chain is under a lot of stress and the truck still wants to slide further, so it's just 2 heavy times for Plan B to double the lifting power. Mike brings in a massive 480 excavator that can lift up to 20 tons, but the process is slow and the pressure is. Mike decides to give it one last try, lifting the truck using both excavators simultaneously. The idea is straightforward. Double the power, double the chances of getting the truck back on the road, but as soon as the machines start pulling, it becomes difficult because the flies aren't making things any easier. They need to find the exact spot to lift before the entire truck goes under. It is painfully obvious that it won't work since the truck is simply too heavy and there isn't much space for maneuvering. The weight is pressing down at an unnatural angle, and no matter how much power is applied, the truck won't move at this point. Having run out of options, Mike thinks that removing the trailer could make things easier, but it's not an easy task. It would take more time to disconnect, and because everything is already behind schedule, that is the last thing they need at this moment. Every minute that is lost is a loss. Chance to engage in gold mining. Tony isn't known for his patience, so if they hook up all the corner cables, you should pull out of there straight away. Meanwhile, the rest of the crew watches, knowing that they can't continue working until the truck is out of the way and the dike is lifted. A 10-ton truck dangling over the brink of a 15th drop prevents the settling pond from getting deeper and the plant from being operational again. Then, Tony is standing with his arms crossed, watching everything happen, and if there's one thing that's clear, it's that he is not happy. The operation has been shut down for more than 24 hours, and not a single ounce of gold has been extracted from the ground. That's a whole day of lost profit. The pressure is growing, and Tony may have to make a difficult decision because his entire operation is at a standstill with the plant shut down and the offline anguish. For a mining crew, gold recovery has entirely stalled. Nothing is worse than equipment failure that brings everything to a complete stop. The longer this truck remains stuck, the more money that is lost, and it's impossible to predict when things will resume their normal course. Mike is able to make some headway. He manages to pull the trailer out of the hole and prevent it from buckling under its own weight. This is a minor win, but the true obstacle still lies ahead. The truck itself is still trapped, and removing it won't be simple. As Mike considers the situation, he begins to think aloud. I was hoping to just get the whole thing to come down over. He suggests that they try to pull the entire truck back onto the road in one move, but before he can finish, Tony interrupts him, saying, "That's stupid," and the idea is quickly put out of his head. Tony knows that this needs to be handled carefully because if they rush it and something goes wrong, they could end up making the situation worse and possibly damaging the truck beyond repair at this point. So I have disconnecting the truck and trailer and pulling them out separately is the easiest way to find another place on this truck where I can lift. If they can remove the pin, the truck won't move, making it simpler to remove each component individually, but even that won't be easy. They must bring in an excavator from a different perspective, ensure that it has sufficient leverage to remove the truck without using excessive force. Tighter than previously due to the strain on the frame and the chains, since the last thing they need is one more unsuccessful attempt because the sun is lowering in the sky and time is running out. If they don't find this out soon, the team is stressed and every second feels longer than the last. Will be lost, and Tony doesn't put up with delays. Mike assumed command of the situation and made sure everything proceeded as safely and smoothly as possible. He instructed the team to let him handle the instructions while they concentrated on staying steady. It was time to try flipping the truck because it was the safer option and everyone was in place. At first, the excavator pulled, but the massive vehicle hardly moved and required more energy, so Mike advised them to try again. Increasing the strain caused the chain's tension to rise, and after some effort, it was discovered that the truck and trailer had actually split apart, which made Mike wasted no time in flipping the 20-ton truck since they could now flip it upright on their own before handling the trailer. As Tony watched intently, Mike made sure everything was clear from the front before granting the all clear. This was a crucial time, and if anything went wrong, it might be dangerous. The excavator began pushing again slowly but gradually. "I'll follow your instructions. Just grasp his hand and say his way of fear." So the chains. When the truck was tightened, it moaned under the strain and eventually started to tilt, but something wasn't quite right. Tony called for a quick stop since he didn't like the way things were going and instructed the crew to make adjustments before continuing, but before they could do so, the truck abruptly overturned much more quickly than anticipated, and it got dangerously close to the excavator, far too close for comfort. It was a heart-stopping moment when Mike narrowly averted a collision, but as the dust settled, Tony dismissed it because he was certain he knew precisely where the truck would land. Now that the truck was back on wheels, it was time to go onto the trailer, where Tony drew out the plan, turned the trailer, and hooked the truck back up and attempted starting it. The team then started over, but this time everything went much more smoothly. Before long, the truck and trailer were upright once more, and the big test had begun. Olive turned the key and waited for a while to see whether the truck would start at all because the end engine had gone through a lot. After almost 2 full days of delays, the truck finally roared back to life, and Tony wasted no time in getting it moving again. There was a lot of work to catch up on, and the pressure was. In order to compensate for the lost time, the dike repair was formally resumed while the truck was operational. Was another significant worry. For the previous week, only one wash plant had been operating the TRL at Paradise Hill, and in order to meet their season goal of 5,000 ounces, they needed to be collecting about 200 ounces per week. When it came time to weigh the gold individually, the number began to rise, increasing by 80, 90, and 100 ounces, continuing at 110, 120, and 130 until the final amount came to 14,358 worth of excess. $350,000. Tony knew that more was always better, therefore if they wanted to stay on course, they had to increase production, which meant working longer hours faster and avoiding delays.